The 1999 album Things Fall Apart was a breakthrough album for the Roots. They're first to sell 500,000, sorry, pull the graphic thing down, blah blah, you get it. I'm not gonna throw facts and figures at you. Things Fall Apart is amazing, and I'm gonna show you how the song Dynamite specifically is a musical time capsule in a number of ways. Buckle up, because we are going a lot of places today. We'll talk first about the year 1999, the song Dynamite, the Roots, J Dilla, the sample used. I'll recreate the beat myself. Then we'll go back in time and trace that sample all the way back 100 years, show you how sampling has been around for a very long time, before fast forwarding past 1999 and into the present to talk about how the elements in Dynamite have evolved since it was released. Plus, I've got my own little personal reveal at the end. Just remember this: one song, 100 years, and 1 mile. Let's start in 1999. The Roots song Dynamite is a great encapsulation of a lot of different hip-hop elements. For one, the Roots are a hip-hop band, which in the 90s was much less common. Pun absolutely intended. The fact that they have live drums especially made them sound a lot different than what was popular at the time, and Questlove has talked in multiple interviews about how the Roots felt like hip-hop didn't fully accept them. However, a hip-hop band was not unheard of. The Sugar Hill Gang would often perform with a live band, and their single Rapper's Delight, which was released in 1979, was the first rap song to become a top 40 hit. Dynamite also contains a sample, which we're going to break all the way down in just a minute, but sampling is a foundational part of hip-hop all throughout its history. The sample in Dynamite is a very jazzy sample, and that sound leans towards stuff like A Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul, and even Wu-Tang and early Nas stuff has jazz samples in it. There's more coming with that in a minute too. So the Roots are in good company here. They're recording Dynamite in the late 90s, but leaning on some of the early 90s, late 80s hip-hop stuff for the jazz-influenced sound. But not only that, on this track they're working with J Dilla, who was a hot new hip-hop producer, was an original Soulquarian member, produced songs on Erica and Common's albums, and had a huge influence on D'Angelo's Voodoo. What I love about J Dilla and Dynamite specifically is we have this hybrid between a sample, a rising hip-hop producer, all mixed with a live band, which again, while the Roots don't own the idea of being a hip-hop band, that's their big unique thing. It's not just one MC or a group of MCs, it's a whole band. So J Dilla producing the Roots directly feels like a unique opportunity to show what he can do. Now, it's hard to say exactly who did what and when, and now we're over 20 years removed from this, but according to one interview with Black Thought, he and Rahani Saeed, the other MC on Dynamite, visited Dilla's basement studio in Detroit in order to get first access to Dilla's latest beats. Dilla came up with the Dynamite beat while they were there, with Questlove and Pete Rock apparently present as well. I'll link to this interview in the description. The Roots finished the song and album at Electric Lady Studios in New York, adding a few elements on top, which again we'll get to in a second, though Dilla also came to Electric Lady a few times, so it's hard to know exactly what happened when and where. Dilla's primary instrument was the Akai MPC 3000. Oh, and if you have a problem with me calling a sampler an instrument, take it up with Roger Lynn, because he calls it that in the manual. Or better yet, keep watching, because really an MPC being used on this song is also the perfect encapsulation of 100 years of sampling. So our elements here are the band, dating back to 1979 with the Sugar Hill Gang, the use of sampling, present all throughout hip-hop, the jazz influence of the late 80s, early 90s artists, and a hot new hip-hop producer who's using a new piece of technology, the Akai MPC 3000. The sample Dilla used for Dynamite is from the song Indiana by Zoot Sims with Bucky Pizzarelli and Buddy Rich. Zoot Sims was a jazz saxophonist with an awesome name, and Bucky Pizzarelli is a famous jazz guitarist, father of John Pizzarelli, another famous jazz guitarist, and if you don't know anything about jazz, you probably at least know the name Buddy Rich. However, the section of this song, Indiana, that Dilla sampled features just guitar. This is perfect considering the Roots are going to add their own instruments on top. Indiana is at a much faster tempo than Dynamite, and the chords fly by. We've talked before about how Dilla had a wide musical vocabulary. He produced hip-hop music that was entirely his own sound, but he knew all kinds of other music on a very deep level. He listened to this stuff and was well-versed in a variety of genres. And his instrument just happened to be an MPC. So I've got the Zoot Sims, Bucky Pizzarelli, Indiana loaded in here. So all the way through the song, you've got sax and guitar going at the same time, and then right here, it breaks down to just guitar for a solo. And I talked to my friend Jamie Arndt about this. He's a great jazz guitar player, and he said listening to this, it's definitely a 7-string guitar. Because if you listen to what he's doing, it's not just that he's comping the chords and moving super fast, he's also using that 7th string to walk a bass line. So we're going to take this, and it's going to end up being this bottom part right here. But basically what we're going to do is just copy this down. So this is slowed down and pitched down, but if we do this the old school way, it's 2 for 1. Instead of doing them separately, I'm going to do it at the same time. I'm going to grab the sample here, make sure warp is not selected, and then transpose this down 6 half steps. And what you're going to see is, not only is it transposing it, it's making the whole thing longer. So now let's take a listen to that. We're so close. So that's essentially the sample. The original Roots version is a little out of tune, but I'm gonna keep it as close to in tune as possible since I'm adding other stuff. Now here's the fun part. Looking at live videos of the Roots, this is how Jeremy Ellis does it, so it feels like this is close to what Dilla was doing. I've taken each one of these chords and chopped them up to be their own sample. Load that in a drum rack and check it out. So the advantage of chopping up the sample so that we can play each individual chord is that if you're playing with live drums, you either got to have the sample locked to a click, have the click in the drummer's ears, or if you do it this way, you're basically playing it like an instrument. And really, I don't think it's that much different than cueing audio samples on a piano MIDI keyboard. Now let's add some drums. These samples are actually from a Questlove sample kit, so it works perfect. Maybe a little bass. Last but not least, yeah, we're doing the vocal percussion. Sometimes I get comments on here like, sampling isn't musical. Real musicians make their own composition from scratch. I just picture like an old-timey guy with like a mustache and a cane and a monocle, and he's like commenting from a typewriter somehow. I don't know. Real musicians. Let's trace this back, shall we? Before J Dilla and the Roots sampled the 1974 recording of Indiana by Zoot Sims, Indiana was a jazz standard that had been performed countless times by countless jazz musicians, including people like Louis Armstrong, as well as the original Dixieland Jazz Band, who recorded it in 1917. I mean, sure, jazz musicians play the same tunes all the time. It's different. Oh, really? While the jazz standard is known as Indiana, the original title is Back Home Again in Indiana and contains a musical quotation from another song, On the Banks of the Wabash Far Away. So, basically a sample. Okay, we're about to go through a lot of old music history, but stick with me because when we bring it back, it's gonna be worth it. Old-timey guy's gonna be pissed! On the Banks of the Wabash Far Away was published in 1897 and was one of the best-selling songs of the 19th century. And by best-selling, I'm not talking about records, I'm talking about sheet music. The standard way to enjoy music at home was to buy the sheet music and play it on your home piano, like at parties and stuff. This was a Tin Pan Alley pop song, which, man, we're getting really far back into music history. Tin Pan Alley was a block of songwriters and publishers in New York, specifically West 28th Street between 5th and 6th Avenues in Manhattan. And while the song On the Banks of the Wabash was originally released as sheet music, it was composed during a major technological transition, the beginning of the phonograph. This song, Wabash, was one of the earliest popular songs to be recorded on this new medium. But the song's composer, Paul Dresser, didn't have control over the distribution of these recordings, so he banded together with other composers to petition the US Congress to expand copyright protections to cover the new recording technology. In other words, the fight over sampling and music rights has been around for a long time. So we're all the way back here in 1897 with the Wabash sheet music. It starts getting recorded on phonograph cylinders and used in a way the original composer didn't foresee. Then in 1917, the song Back Home Again in Indiana borrows heavily from this song, musically and lyrically, which starts a dispute with Paul Dresser's estate that never got resolved. In other words, Back Home Again in Indiana essentially samples Wabash, and they end up not paying royalties. Indiana then becomes a jazz standard, as well as the unofficial anthem of the state of Indiana, and is played during the pre-race ceremonies of the Indy 500 still to this day. Oh, but I've got a bonus sampling for you, old-timey guy, the contrafact. A contrafact is a musical work that's based on a different musical work. Like a sample? Like in jazz, if you put a new melody over existing familiar chords. Basically, sampling? This is an important element of jazz music because it allows musicians to create new songs based on other songs that are not only familiar to the listener, but also the performer. Yeah, so jazzy sampling. A great example of this is the very famous jazz tune Donna Lee, which is a contrafact of, can you guess it? Let's say it together, in Indiana. So when J Dilla and the Roots sampled the 1974 Zoot Sims recording of Indiana, they're taking part in a time-honored musical tradition that dates back, in this one song specifically, to 1897, or 102 years prior to the release of of Things Fall Apart. Over these 102 years, the song On the Banks of the Wabash started as piano sheet music, became a phonograph recording against the composer's wishes, was essentially sampled in the writing of Back Home Again in Indiana in 1917, branched off in 1947 as a musical contrafact as the jazz standard Donna Lee, was recorded on a 7-string guitar as the jazz standard Indiana in 1974 by Zoot Sims and Bucky Pizzarelli, which was then sampled from a vinyl record by Dilla and the Roots for the 1999 hip-hop song Dynamite using an Akai MPC 3000, which was then pressed on a CD for the album Things Fall Apart. Dynamite not only contains a combination of elements from different eras of hip-hop, it contains over 100 years of music history, sampling, and changing technology. The Roots recorded Things Fall Apart at Electric Lady Studios in 1999, which is just over a mile from Tin Pan Alley, where the original sample, Wabash, originated in 1897. One song, 100 years, 1 mile. In my video on the formation of the Soulquarians, we talked about how the Roots prior to this album didn't quite fit into the mainstream hip-hop of the day. East Coast, West Coast, the South, and then the Roots, who kind of felt like outsiders. But with Dynamite, they perfectly blended together all of these different hip-hop elements, different music history elements over the past 100 years, different Soulquarian elements, and Things Fall Apart as a whole feels like the Roots firmly planting a flag in the ground of hip-hop and stating who they are. A hip-hop band. But let's keep this going. Let's keep tracing the same history until we end up at, me. Things Fall Apart was their breakthrough album, and it's regarded as a classic. It went gold in 1999, but platinum in 2013, which tells me this album is not of its time. It's a slow burn, and it's timeless. And all of these individual elements we mentioned are still in play, some of them even stronger. Sampling is still going strong, MPCs, Ableton, and everything that goes along with it has continued to evolve. Dilla is regarded as one of the greatest producers of all time, having invented a new time feel that's still influential today. And as far as jazz and hip-hop go, well, I mean, you've got stuff like Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly, which is hip-hop with some jazz elements, and you've also got people like Robert Glasper, who lean further on the jazz end of hip-hop. And as far as the Roots being accepted as a hip-hop band, Quest tells a story in his book Music is History when the Roots did a Chappelle concert with Nas around 2006, in which Nas was blown away by the Roots. Quest said he realized it was because he actually hadn't heard them before. He recalled, "This was always my biggest fear, that we were Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, and here was proof. Hip-hop still hadn't listened to us." But he continues, "By the time Rich and I were talking about it in 2014, everything had come full circle. Nas was also a guest at the Chappelle shows, and he had his own live band and everything, Roots style. I'm glad that the Roots finally felt accepted into hip-hop despite being a band, because for one, I love the Roots, but for two, I play bass in Nas's band. If you don't know me personally, you probably didn't know that, but it's true. Look." This music history traces all the way from 1897 with Wabash, 1917 with Indiana, 1974 with Zoot Sims and Bucky Pizzarelli, up through Dynamite by the Roots in 1999, and all the way to me right here in 2022. That's why I love this stuff. Everything affects everything else in some way, either as imitation, reaction, or sampling, and seeing these connections and stories makes the whole thing even richer. "Oh, I guess you have a point." Speaking of, if you don't know the story on the formation of the Soulquarians, that story makes this story even richer, so here's the next video you need to watch.